Sophia Dawson stood in front of the mirror, gently caressing her round belly. At 29, she had always believed that life would be a series of beautifully orchestrated moments, especially with Max Holt by her side. They had met in college, and from the very beginning, Max had been her knight in shining armor, handsome, charming, and confident. His deep brown eyes held a mystery that she was drawn to, and his ability to make her laugh in the darkest of times was something she cherished deeply. Max had always been the kind of man who could light up a room with his smile, and his ambition made him a force to be reckoned with. They had spent years building their life together, from their dream wedding to the news that Sophia was expecting their first child. It was everything she had ever wanted. But lately, something had changed. The warmth she once felt in their marriage had begun to fade, replaced by a cold distance that left Sophia feeling hollow. Max, the man who had once whispered sweet nothings in her ear, had become a shadow of himself. His late-night meetings, unexplained absences, and distracted conversations had left Sophia questioning everything she had believed in. She had tried to ignore the nagging feeling in her gut, telling herself it was just stress, that it was all part of the excitement of their growing family. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. Sophia had always been the optimist, the one who believed that love could conquer any obstacle. But lately it seemed as though she was the only one fighting for their relationship. Max had become increasingly withdrawn, his affection fading, and his presence at home felt more like a formality than a choice. It was as if the man she once knew had vanished, leaving behind a stranger who barely noticed the growing distance between them. As her due date approached, Sophia's emotions swirled with uncertainty. She had always imagined this time of her life would be filled with joy, excitement, and anticipation. But instead, she was consumed with doubt and fear. What had happened to the man who had promised to love her forever? What was she missing? And most importantly, was she strong enough to face whatever truth lay ahead? In an attempt to rekindle the spark they had lost, Max planned a romantic getaway, just the two of them. A weekend in a secluded cabin, far from the distractions of the world, he promised. Maybe this would be the moment they needed to reconnect, to rediscover the love that had once burned so brightly. Sophia wanted to believe that, more than anything. But a quiet voice inside her whispered that this trip might reveal more than just a rekindled flame. It might expose the cracks in their foundation. With a heart full of hope and fear, Sophia took one last look at herself in the mirror. She wanted this trip to work. She wanted to feel like the woman Max had fallen in love with. But deep down, she knew that sometimes the hardest truths are the ones we least expect, and that weekend would be the moment she would uncover something that would change everything. Would it be the moment they could rebuild together? Or would it shatter their world beyond repair? Only time would tell. Max had planned everything down to the smallest detail, a weekend getaway, just the two of them, to a secluded cabin deep in the woods. For weeks he had kept the surprise under wraps, his eyes sparkling with excitement every time he mentioned it, though there was something about his behavior that didn't quite sit right with Sophia. She wanted to believe this was exactly what they needed, a chance to rekindle the connection that had slowly faded between them. Yet the nagging feeling in her chest persisted, a quiet whisper telling her that something was amiss. As they drove toward the cabin, the winding road flanked by tall, dense trees seemed to draw them deeper into a world untouched by time. The air smelled of pine and earth, a sharp contrast to the city's noise that always seemed to follow them. Max was at the wheel, his gaze focused ahead, though his hands gripped the steering wheel a little too tightly. Sophia tried to shake off the growing sense of unease. This trip, she told herself, was meant to be an escape, a chance to feel close to him again, to share moments of laughter, tenderness and warmth. But why was Max so quiet? The cabin came into view as the sun began to dip behind the horizon, casting the sky in a fiery mix of oranges and purples. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she took in the beauty of their surroundings. It was picturesque, the perfect backdrop for a romantic weekend. The cabin, nestled among the trees, exuded rustic charm with its log walls, stone chimney, and expansive windows that allowed them to look out over the wilderness. For a brief moment, Sophia felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, something better. Max pulled up to the front of the cabin and cut the engine. The silence between them felt heavy, and Sophia hesitated before opening her door. She wanted to break the tension, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just smiled at him and stepped out, stretching her legs after the long drive. Max followed, though he didn't offer his usual playful grin. Instead, he took a deep breath of the crisp evening air and motioned for Sophia to follow him inside. The cabin was even more beautiful inside, with its warm wood floors, large fireplace, and cozy furniture. The scent of wood smoke filled the air, adding a sense of comfort and intimacy. The table was already set for dinner, and candles flickered softly in the dim light. Max had gone to great lengths to create the perfect atmosphere, romantic, quiet, just for the two of them. Yet, as they sat down to eat, Sophia couldn't ignore the tension that seemed to hang between them like a thick fog. Max had opened a bottle of wine, his hands moving with practiced ease as he poured 2 glasses. He smiled at her, but it didn't reach his eyes. "This is nice, right?" he asked, though his tone sounded more like a question than a statement. Sophia smiled back, but there was a tightness in her chest. "It's perfect," she replied, though her voice sounded smaller than she intended. They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the clinking of silverware against plates. Sophia couldn't help but watch him. Max had always been the one to carry a conversation, to keep the mood light and easy. But tonight, he seemed distant, as if his mind were somewhere far away, occupied by something or someone other than her. He glanced at her every now and then, but his gaze quickly shifted, as if avoiding her eyes altogether. Sophia took a deep breath and finally broke the silence. "Max, are you okay?" The question hung in the air, heavier than she had intended. She noticed his hand freeze mid-motion as he set down his fork, his eyes meeting hers for the first time in what felt like hours. For a brief moment, his expression softened, but only for an instant. He cleared his throat, then gave a strained smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a lot on my mind. You know how it is with work." His words sounded rehearsed, as if he were saying what he thought she wanted to hear, not the truth. Sophia felt the knot in her stomach tighten. She could tell he was lying. She could always tell. But what was he hiding? Was it the stress of work? Or was it something deeper? Something that had been festering between them for far too long. The dinner continued, but the conversation had faded. They talked about trivial things, how the cabin reminded them of the vacations they used to take before everything got so complicated, how the view of the stars outside was breathtaking. Yet, no matter how hard she tried to engage him, Max's attention was somewhere else. It felt like she was sitting across from a stranger, someone she once knew so well, but now felt so far removed from. Later that evening, after they had finished eating, Max suggested they go outside for a walk to see the stars. They bundled up in jackets and stepped outside into the cool night air. The sky was clear, and the stars shimmered like tiny diamonds, scattered across a velvet blanket. Max stood beside her, his hands buried in his pockets, and the silence between them was almost suffocating. Sophia, struggling to break the weight of the moment, finally whispered, "Max, I miss us. I miss the way things were." She turned to face him, hoping for some acknowledgement, some sign that he felt the same. Max looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he took a deep breath and said, "I miss us too, Soph. But sometimes it feels like we're drifting, and I don't know how to stop it." In that instant, a wave of emotion washed over Sophia. She felt both relieved and heartbroken. Max had admitted what she had been feeling all along, that their connection had been slipping away. But hearing it from him made it real, and the truth was more painful than she could have ever imagined. The night sky, so vast and beautiful, felt colder now, as if the universe itself was watching them unravel. Max had planned this getaway with the hope of reconnecting, but instead, it had only uncovered the distance that had grown between them. And for Sophia, the realization was a bitter pill to swallow. Maybe the man she had loved for so long was no longer the same person she thought he was. Sophia stood in the dimly lit living room of the cabin, staring at the flickering fire as the warmth from the flames failed to reach the growing chill in her heart. Max had stepped out to the porch to get some fresh air, leaving her alone with her thoughts, and the silence between them weighed heavily on her shoulders. Despite the picturesque setting, the quiet had never felt more suffocating. She could still feel the lingering tension from their dinner, the words unspoken, the distance growing between them. She had tried to shake off the feeling, to believe that this getaway was meant to bring them back together, to remind them of the love they once shared. But there was something about Max's behavior, his nervousness, his avoidance, that she couldn't ignore. He had always been open with her, or at least she thought he had been. But tonight, it felt like a wall had gone up between them, a wall she couldn't see but could definitely feel. Her gaze fell on the suitcase Max had left on the bed, his clothes haphazardly spilling out from it. He had been in such a rush to get everything packed, but something about the way his bag was carelessly left behind caught her attention. Sophia hesitated, but curiosity soon overpowered her. She walked across the room, her heart beating a little faster. She knew she shouldn't snoop. She trusted Max, or at least she had, but something was gnawing at her, a feeling that refused to be ignored. With a quiet breath, she crouched down beside the suitcase and began rifling through the contents. There were clothes, a few toiletries, but nothing that stood out. She pushed aside a shirt, a jacket, and then tucked under a pair of jeans, she felt something unusual. A small black box. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. It was compact, elegant in its simplicity, and it felt heavy in her hands, as if it held more than just physical weight. Sophia's breath hitched as she slowly lifted the lid. Inside, there were several photographs, neatly stacked and partially covered by a few documents. Her pulse quickened. She glanced over her shoulder to make sure Max wasn't coming back, then focused her attention on the photographs first. As she flipped through them, her heart sank deeper with each image. There he was, Max, standing beside a woman who wasn't her. They were close, far too close. In one photo, they were laughing together on a beach, the sun casting golden light over their faces. In another, they were sitting together at a dinner table, their hands almost touching, their smiles intimate and filled with familiarity. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she realized that these were not just casual photographs. These were memories of a relationship that had nothing to do with her. Her hands shook as she set the photographs aside and began flipping through the stack of documents. She didn't know what she was expecting, but the business contracts she found weren't something she could have prepared for. They were official-looking papers, some stamped with dates from just a few months before their wedding. As she scanned the words on the contracts, her stomach tightened with disbelief. The names on the contracts were unfamiliar, but her eyes kept returning to Max's signature. He had been involved in some kind of business dealings, serious ones, with people she had never heard of. She felt her chest constrict, her thoughts racing. But it wasn't just the documents that unsettled her. It was the dates on them. The contracts were signed at the same time Max had been with her, the time they had been planning their wedding. What was even more disturbing was the involvement of the woman from the photos in these contracts. Sophia could see her name mentioned in several places, always right alongside Max's. It wasn't just a business partnership. There was something personal there, too, something that didn't fit into the picture of the life Max had painted for her. The dots began to connect in Sophia's mind, each revelation adding weight to the growing suspicion in her heart. The woman in the photos wasn't just an old friend or business partner. She had been part of Max's life in ways that Sophia hadn't known, in ways that Max had never told her about. The dates on the document suggested that Max's relationship with this woman had extended far beyond the boundaries of professional or platonic ties. And the fact that it had happened right before their wedding, it felt like a betrayal that Sophia hadn't seen coming, a betrayal that had been hidden in plain sight. Her mind raced as she pieced everything together. The late-night meetings, the sudden trips Max had taken that never seemed to have a clear explanation, the way he had grown distant. It wasn't stress or work as he had claimed. It was something else entirely. He had been hiding a part of his life from her, a part that she had no idea existed. And now, the weight of those hidden truths was crashing down on her, leaving her with nothing but the sting of betrayal and the confusion of a life she thought she knew crumbling before her eyes. As the truth sank in, Sophia felt like the ground beneath her feet was shifting. She had trusted Max with everything: her heart, her future, their family. But now, it seemed like the foundation of everything she had built with him was cracked, shattered by the dark secret he had been hiding all along. Sophia's hands trembled as she carefully placed the stack of photographs back into the small black box, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The documents lay scattered across the bed, their harsh reality sinking in with every glance. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, a rapid rhythm of shock and disbelief that refused to slow down. Every photo, every contract was like a dagger to her trust, her love, her marriage. How had Max kept all of this from her? How could he lie so effortlessly while she poured her heart into their future together? She didn't know how long she had been sitting there, staring at the proof of the life he had hidden from her. But the sudden sound of the front door opening, followed by the familiar creak of the wooden steps outside, made her snap to attention. Max was back. Her heart stopped for a moment, the cold air of realization settling in around her like a suffocating fog. She quickly gathered the documents, shoving them back into the box, and closed it with a shaky breath. Just as she stood up to compose herself, Max entered the room. He paused at the door for a moment, his eyes meeting hers. The tension in the air was thick, almost tangible, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Max's gaze shifted down to the bed, where the small black box sat precariously, a silent witness to the confrontation that was about to unfold. Sophia's voice was barely a whisper at first, but it grew louder, more steady, as the weight of the situation became unbearable. "Max," she said, her tone laced with a quiet fury. "What is this? What have you been hiding from me?" Max's face drained of color as he realized what she had found. His lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, he stepped forward, looking from the box to Sophia, then back again. "Sophia, His voice faltered, and he seemed lost for a moment, as if the reality of the situation was hitting him with the same force it had hit her. Sophia's eyes narrowed, and she held the box up between them, her voice rising with the emotion she could no longer contain. "Don't lie to me, Max. I know everything. The photographs, the contracts, the other woman. Who is she, Max? Who is she, and why was she so important to you that you kept her a secret from me?" Max's face twisted in guilt, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he couldn't look her in the eyes. His hands clenched at his sides, and he stood there, frozen for a few moments as if weighing his words. Then, with a deep, reluctant sigh, he spoke. I never meant for it to get this far," he began, his voice low and heavy with regret. "The woman in the photographs, her name is Lily. She was a part of my life long before I met you, and yes, we were close, more than just business partners." He paused, as if struggling with his own confession, and Sophia felt a chill creep down her spine. "So you were involved with her," she whispered, her voice trembling with pain. "You were with her, while you were with me, weren't you?" The accusation hung in the air like a heavy weight. Max's silence was all the answer she needed. He nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. "Yes, we were. More than business partners. We were in a relationship, but it was complicated. When I met you, everything changed. I fell in love with you, and I thought I could leave it all behind. I thought I could move on, start fresh." He stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "But I was wrong, Sophia. I kept it from you. I thought it was in the past, that it didn't matter anymore. But it does. I see that now." Sophia felt as though the floor had been pulled out from under her. His words stung, but the silence between them was even worse. Her mind raced as she tried to process what he had just admitted. Her heart ached with a pain she couldn't put into words. The love she had built for Max, the trust she had placed in him, felt like it was crumbling beneath her feet. How could he betray her like this? How could he hide something so important, so painful from her for so long? Tears welled up in her eyes, and she turned away, unable to hold them back any longer. The weight of his confession was too much to bear. "How long, Max? How long have you been lying to me? All this time I thought we had a future. I thought you loved me." Her voice cracked with anguish. "I trusted you." Max reached out to her, but she took a step back, shaking her head. "Number, you don't get to do this. You don't get to apologize now. You don't get to erase what you've done. You broke my trust, Max. You broke us." The words hit him like a blow. He stood there, helpless, watching as Sophia fought to hold back her sobs. He had betrayed her, and now the weight of that betrayal was sinking in. There were no excuses, no explanations that could fix this. All he had left was regret, and it was too late. Sophia's tears fell freely now, her body trembling with the force of her heartbreak. She struggled to make sense of the tangled mess of emotions inside her: betrayal, anger, confusion, and the crushing weight of the love she had once shared with Max, now shattered beyond repair. Max stood motionless, his own chest tightening with the grief of what he had done. He had lost her, and nothing he could say or do would ever bring back the woman he once had. Sophia stood by the window, her eyes staring blankly at the darkened sky outside, but she wasn't seeing the stars or the moon. Her mind was replaying everything Max had confessed, every word, every admission, until it felt like her heart was being crushed under their weight. The betrayal, the lies, the secret life he had kept from her for so long. It all felt like a cruel joke. The love she had once believed in, the trust she had placed in him, was now just a shattered illusion. The silence in the cabin was deafening, broken only by the occasional crackle from the dying fire in the hearth. Max stood a few feet behind her, his presence a stark reminder of the man she thought she knew, and the man he had turned out to be. His voice, full of regret and desperation, reached her ears but seemed to come from far away, as though she were listening from a different world. "Sophia, please," Max pleaded, his voice trembling. I never wanted you to find out this way. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear, all that. The affair, the business, it's in the past. It's over. I love you. I love us." Sophia felt a chill spread through her as his words bounced off her, each syllable more painful than the last. "You love me?" She had given him everything, her heart, her trust, her future. And this was how he repaid her. The images of him with another woman, the documents that proved his deceit. It all played in her mind like a never-ending loop. How could he expect her to forgive him so easily, as if everything could just go back to how it was before? Max stepped forward, reaching for her hand, but Sophia pulled away, as if his touch burned her. "Please, Max," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't get it. You've taken everything from me. All the promises, all the dreams, everything we built together. It was all a lie." She could feel the tears welling up again, the pain of his betrayal cutting through her like 1,000 tiny shards of glass. Max's face crumpled with guilt, his eyes pleading as if somehow if he said the right words, everything would be fixed. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. I made a terrible mistake. Please forgive me. I was scared. I didn't know how to let go of the past. But I swear I want you. I want our future. Please don't walk away from us." Sophia felt the pull of his words, the familiar warmth in his voice that had once made her feel safe. But that warmth now felt hollow, like an empty promise she could no longer trust. The love she had for him hadn't disappeared overnight, but the trust, the foundation of everything they had built together, was gone. She turned away, her heart heavy with the realization that no matter how much she still loved him, some wounds were too deep to heal. Their relationship, once full of hope, was now a fractured thing, and she couldn't pretend otherwise. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Max," she said softly, her voice thick with pain. "I don't know if we can fix this. I don't think I can forgive you." The finality in her words hung in the air, and she knew, as she stood there with him in the silence, that their relationship might never be the same again. Max had shattered everything she had believed in, and now she was left to pick up the pieces. Sophia stood in the dimly lit room, her heart heavy, the weight of the decision she was about to make pressing down on her like an unbearable force. Max's desperate pleas echoed in her mind, his voice full of regret and longing. "Please, Sophia, don't walk away from us. I can make it right, I swear. I'll do whatever it takes." But even as his words wrapped around her, they didn't reach her heart. The truth she had uncovered, the betrayals she could never forget, hung like a shadow over every moment they had shared. Taking a deep breath, Sophia turned toward the door, her movements slow but deliberate. She couldn't stay in that cabin any longer, trapped between the love she had for Max and the crushing weight of his deception. "I need time, Max," she said softly, her voice trembling with the force of the emotions swirling inside her. "I need space to think." Max reached for her, his hand desperate, his eyes pleading. "Sophia, please don't go. We can work this out. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me a chance." Sophia hesitated, her heart aching as she looked at him. She had once believed in their future together so fully, but now that belief felt shattered, impossible to rebuild with mere words. "I don't know if love is enough to fix this, Max," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." With that, she stepped out of the cabin, the cool night air hitting her face like a wake-up call. The sky above was clear, the stars distant and cold. As she walked away from the warmth of the cabin, the weight of her decision settled into her chest, but for the first time in days there was a glimmer of clarity. She needed to focus on herself, on her future, especially for the sake of the child growing inside her. The cold night air cleared her mind, and she realized that no matter how much she loved Max, She couldn't sacrifice her own well-being for a relationship that had been built on lies. She had to be strong, not just for herself, but for her unborn child. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew one thing. She needed to take control of her own life, and that began with taking the time she needed to heal. As Sophia walked through the quiet woods, her steps slower now, she reflected on the painful journey that had brought her here. For so long, she had placed her worth in someone else's hands, believing that love was enough to endure anything. But she had learned the hard way that trust, once broken, was difficult to rebuild. Her heart ached with the realization that sometimes the hardest decisions were the ones that led to true growth. She couldn't sacrifice her sense of self for a relationship built on lies. Max's journey was one of regret and confusion. As Sophia left, he was left to confront the consequences of his actions, wondering if the love they had once shared could survive the secrets he had kept hidden. But he was facing a reality that Sophia had already accepted. Sometimes the past was too broken to repair. Sophia paused under the vast sky, her eyes gazing at the moonlit horizon. It was as if the world was telling her that she was not alone. The night, though silent and cold, held a sense of possibility. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but she knew she had the strength to face it. With the child growing inside her and the lessons she had learned, Sophia felt a new sense of empowerment. It was time to build her future, even if it meant doing it alone. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was hers to take.